It is tariff week for the Trump administration this week. President Donald Trump rolling out a wide array of reciprocal tariffs. We're recording this on April 2nd, the day that Trump rolls out these tariffs. And here to explain is Brett Rowland. Brett, thanks for talking to us about this.
Thanks so much for having me, Casey. There's a lot to talk about, and there's a lot we still don't know. And I think that people are expecting a lot of answers, and I'm not sure how quickly we'll have them. So I think it's going to be an interesting experiment.
Yeah, I think you're right about the experiment's a good way. The unknown is a good way of thinking about it. I want to talk about some of the effects, but first, given that this is so unusual, that this has not been a big campaign topic in the last couple of decades, how did we get here? Did Trump promise this? How specific did he get in talking about these policies leading up to today? How did we get here?
That's a great question. So this was something that came up repeatedly on the campaign trail. Trump frequently said during his rallies that tariff was the most beautiful word in the English language. It was a phrase that we heard many times. He would talk extensively about tariffs during his rallies. And basically his takeaway is that America has gotten this bad deal on trade. We have trade deficits with most of our top trading partners. And he generally thinks that the USA has been on the wrong side of these deals, essentially getting poor treatment from friend and foe alike. So not only our allies, but also and our competitors, but also like Canada, Mexico, and even Europe. So there's a huge range of potential, potential fallout for this. But Trump has certainly talked about it in the lead up to today. Once he took office, he sort of got rolling with first hit Canada and Mexico with tariffs, but quickly rescinded those. And so we had about 3 days worth of tariffs since Trump has taken office. But the rest of the time has largely been duty free trade with the exception of the steel and aluminum taxes, which Trump put at 25%. So he's made some progress. He's talked a lot about tariffs, and he's assigned his staff to come up with a plan, which we expect him to reveal today.
Okay, so what he's trying to accomplish here, purportedly, is to level the playing field, make things fair as he sees it. From Trump's perspective, the U.S. is being ripped off. I think it's not a hard sell for Americans to believe that the rest of the world is ripping us off. That's kind of like a meme in American politics today. This idea that, we send money to Ukraine, but it's somehow being stolen, right? That's just a common belief in the U.S. that U.S. aid money is being misused, that the world is somehow stealing our money through foreign aid, or it's being misused by liberal groups. That's a common belief. This belief that there are many parts of the world are benefiting from our defense, for instance. There's a funny comedian talks about how it's easy for Canada to be the cool, laid back, nice guys because they have the U.S. military, right on their doorstep. So it's, so this idea that there's a lot of countries, Europe, Canada, others, that are able to spend less on defense because of the U.S. So I think there's a reason this message is resonating as far as maybe the economics of the world being out of order. Now, the question is, do these tariffs actually help Americans? Do they fix that problem? What are you hearing from experts in the research that you're seeing?
So that's a really good question. So as you said, Trump wants America front and center here. He wants America getting the best deals. He wants to reduce trade deficits with all countries, and he's also promised that these tariffs would pay off for Americans. So he's promised that tariffs would shift the tax burden away from Americans and onto foreign countries. But experts generally say that tariffs are paid by people who import foreign products, not the foreign countries themselves. And then those importers have a choice. They can either take the loss. So in this case, on cars, for example, we know it'd be about a 25% tariff on foreign parts and foreign cars. So they can either try to absorb that loss or pass that loss on to consumers, generally through higher prices. Trump said this is going to make America wealthy. Not everyone agrees. There's some prominent senators. I think Senator Rand Paul has spoken out about this and saying that, it's America's free trade that has made it so wealthy. And so there's disagreement. The experts certainly seem to point to higher prices to consumers and retaliatory tariffs from other nations as possible consequences here. But until we know exactly what Trump's going to do, it's going to be harder to predict what the response will be. So from other nations, but other nations have promised that they will respond. So we'll have to see.
Yeah, he's certainly going against sort of the Republican economic theory, free market theory that's really helped define the Republican Party, at least since Ronald Reagan, which is really interesting shift within the party. For a while, these tariffs were, talked about as simply negotiating tools to extort other countries. But it seems that we're beyond that now. And he said, are these what's coming this week, the reciprocal tariffs that he's been talking about, where we only tariff countries as much as they tariff us?
Yes. So that's what he's expected to announce today. Now, just exactly where this will fall is unclear. So he's said a couple different things in recent weeks. During this joint address to Congress at the beginning of the month, the beginning of March, he said that that everybody who charges the U.S. Import fees or import duties, import taxes, would get a corresponding tariff in the U.S. So this sort of like this for that type thing, or a reciprocal, hey, whatever you charge us, we're going to charge you. In more recent days, as we come up to the deadline today, he's been saying things like the tariffs are going to be nicer or kinder or more generous. So just what that means in terms of like a number or how it affects consumers, still not known. But he's hinted that it may be somewhat softer of a policy than he had initially projected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a hallmark of how Trump works, is to say something really aggressively, roll it out, have some criticism, and then rework it immediately to make it more palatable. And it's almost difficult to criticize because it changes so quickly. And maybe the end result actually does end up being much better and a better solution than what was initially rolled out. And so it was just kind of a period of chaos between announcement and actual policy. I think that's what you're referring to. It's something we should be on the lookout for this week and probably the weeks to come as other countries push back, as prices rise. So it seems like we're probably going to see, at least initially, some higher prices for Americans. We probably will see some tax revenue raised. How much, that's in question. I think there's some doubt about that. But if people are paying these tariffs, it's going to raise some money, at least. And then there's the more long-term question, which is really the promise of tariffs, which is, of course, tariffs are painful. They're meant to be painful to force companies to build in America. Yeah, we want it to be painful to import a car from another country because we want you to build your car here. And so the idea that when you think about it from a kind of a building up America's manufacturing base, it really adds to the argument when you say tariffs are painful, because they're designed to be painful to incentivize domestic production. Is that a right characterization? What are you hearing about that? I'm seeing a lot about investment in the U.S. lately that Trump has gotten. Maybe they're just lobbying him for a carve out from tariffs, as like automakers have been able to sort of secure. So what do you think about all that?
That's a great question. So I think that for sure Trump wants America to be at the center of world trade, wants to be at the center of world manufacturing, wants to bring back jobs that he says we've lost because of these bad deals. And he also seems to have a real focus on American workers, specifically the auto unions. He's been have praised his decisions. But just exactly how it shakes out, I guess, remains to be determined. But I think that this idea of building back up America hasn't happened in so long that it seems foreign to a lot of people, and probably also confusing since really we've been known for essentially duty-free trade.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's a really interesting issue. It's funny, so much of the narrative and the discussion about this issue is controlled by cities where people have, technology or knowledge work and they have college degrees, but only, 2/3 of the country doesn't have a college degree, and they would benefit from jobs like this, but they don't have podcasts or YouTube channels, and they don't live in New York or Manhattan. They don't live in DC or DuPont Circle, right? or LA. They don't live in the media centers. And so I think that's why we're trying to give both sides to this. It might be more expensive for, a senator's wife who's buying Fruit Loops at the grocery store. But how real are the manufacturing gains that Trump has promised? I think that's what we're trying to dig into. That's what we're going to keep reporting on. How do you even balance those two? I don't think that's an easy answer, but we're going to keep digging in the question. Brett, final word to you, man.
No, I think you're exactly right. So like just how much money it'll bring in, just how much jobs it'll bring in. I think those are all unknowns at this point. But, I think that it's certainly going to be interesting to watch this roll out. I think that we're up for a lot of changes, and that the White House has repeatedly said, we're not going to focus on what the stock market does. We're not going to focus on what other countries do. The White House has repeatedly said that Wall Street is going to get through this just fine, and that they're more focused on American workers. So, we'll see how it shakes out.
All right, Brett Rowland, thanks for coming on to talk about this issue. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.